You can feel the difference before you can even explain it. If you stand in the middle of Toronto in the dead of February, you are not standing in a place that applauds delusion. You are standing in concrete, salt, and slush. You are looking at a gray sky that goes dark before 5 in the afternoon. It is a city of commutes, of quiet endurance, of survival mode.
What was the response you get as a Canadian black Jewish rapper trying to get attention in the US?
I think initially my goal was to be a protege that didn't flop. You know, I just wanted to be somebody that was like remotely as important as my mentor.
And then there is Los Angeles. A city built entirely on flashing lights, gated driveways, and a relentless, suffocating heat. A city that doesn't just reward delusion, it industrializes it.
You said you wanted to have $25 million by the time you're 25. You did that. Now you say you want $250 million by the time you're 29.
25 million at the time seemed crazy to me, but when you start becoming a headlining touring act and, you know, brands want to get involved with you and you can go do private events and whatnot, now I see that there's other ways.
Here is the paradox I cannot stop staring at. 3 of the biggest, most dominant pop cultural forces of the modern era, Drake, The Weeknd, and Justin Bieber, all come out of the exact same Canadian province. They come from a country whose entire recorded music market was roughly $659 million in 2023. Ranked 8th globally, yes, but still an absolute fraction of the American machine.
I never forget having this one phone call with this executive, and he said to me, "There'll never ever be a Canadian superstar rapper." What do you mean? We don't live in igloos, man. Like, there's talent here, and we've definitely proved them wrong, and I do believe that like the next 50 years is gonna be even bigger.
So the question we need to ask isn't just, how did they make it? The darker, much more dangerous question is, what did crossing the border force them to become? Because Canada is a safety net. That is not to say it is soft or that life there is easy, but it is fundamentally a safety net. It is a society with healthcare that doesn't bankrupt you, with income supports that exist to catch your fall, and a culture that quietly, systemically prioritizes stability.
Canada is literally designed to help you climb from the bottom to the middle class. The social safety net in Canada works.
America is different. America is a tightrope suspended over a canyon. And when you live on a tightrope long enough, you don't just learn balance, you learn paranoia. You learn to wear a mask. You learn the terrifying art of overcompensation. And sometimes, the tightrope breaks you. To understand the psychology of the Canadian export, you have to start inside the incubator. You have to understand the environment that built them.
I was once chilling in my room, watching TV, just in a regular place, and now I'm in this big world, living my dream and, you know, doing what I love, and it's just crazy how it all came around.
I spoke about Los Angeles in my music, and I had never been. For example, in the morning, Cali is the mission, you know? And to me, that's like a fantasy world, you know? California is like, you made it if you go to California.
Was it what you had imagined it to be when you were writing about it?
No.
The part that most American commentators completely miss is that Canada is not structurally designed to manufacture megastars. It is designed to manufacture functioning, predictable adults. The economy is heavily service-based. One World Bank-derived estimate puts service employment at nearly 80% of the Canadian workforce. That is not a moral judgment, it is a macroeconomic design choice. It is a system built to reward credentialed pathways, predictability, and a respectable life. It is not naturally aligned to the scorched earth, global at all costs ambition that superstardom demands.
I can give you $100,000.
Yeah.
Right
what do
now.
you do with that?
You don't even know what to do with it.
Right.
And it's also like $100,000 is not going to make you be a superstar. You know how many superstars we would have if that's all it took was $100,000?
Yeah, if you had that's the formula.
You know what I mean? Like,
okay.
Now, take that baseline of stability and pour winter on top of it. Seasonal depression is not just an internet aesthetic or a mood board. It is clinically recognized. Canadian mental health sources explicitly link seasonal affective disorder to the severe reduction of sunlight in the fall and winter.
Seasonal depression or seasonal affective disorder, which often starts with fatigue, low energy, but starts to involve more symptoms of depression, symptoms of sadness, lethargy, apathy.
The Canadian Psychological Association estimates that roughly 15% of Canadians will experience seasonal depression multiple times in their lifetime, with 2 to 3% experiencing serious debilitating cases. Winter in Ontario does one of two things to a person. It dulls you or it focuses you. You either sink into the dark and wait for the spring, or you do what obsessives do. You use the sensory deprivation to build a ritual. You go into a basement studio, you lock the door, you repeat, and you sharpen your skills in total isolation because there is literally nothing else to do. But here's the trapdoor. Let's say you do the work. Let's say you become exceptional inside that Canadian basement. You still face an insurmountable mathematical problem, the market cap. The Canadian music industry is increasingly global by absolute necessity. Spotify's own data reveals that Canadian artists earn nearly 460 million Canadian dollars in royalties in 2024. But here is the critical statistic. 92% of those royalties came from outside of Canada. Translation: the home crowd is not enough to sustain you. The paycheck is foreign.
Canadians feel like they have to go to LA. They have to go to the US in order to gain any kind of exposure.
When you're traveling or in the States and, did you know so-and-so was Canadian? Did you know Ryan Gosling was Canadian? Ryan Reynolds and Sandra Oh? Often people don't, right? Because they're just Hollywood stars to them. So I get why talented people go. It is a bigger industry. You can reach more people. The budgets are bigger. All of that is bigger. The audience is bigger.
Even Canadian independent labels will tell you the quiet part out loud. Export is not an option. It is vital to survival. You cannot scale to the top of the world by getting 5% of 40 million people. Furthermore, because of the overwhelming proximity to the United States, Canadian audiences have historically relied on American validation. A Canadian artist often isn't treated like a superstar at home until America tells Canada that they are a superstar. So, if you are a young artist in Ontario with an outsized dream, you aren't just trying to make it, you are trying to escape a ceiling. You are trying to break out of the building. And that brings us to the border crossing. I need you to understand something fundamental about the American music industry, specifically the American hip-hop ecosystem. It isn't just music. It is an ecosystem with its own geopolitics, its own localized gatekeepers, its own set of unwritten rules, and its own physical enforcement. If you think check-in culture is just internet folklore, you are not paying attention to the legal filings. In March 2025, mainstream reporting from the Los Angeles Times detailed a federal complaint alleging that visitors, specifically out-of-town musicians and athletes, were required to check in to obtain protection while operating in certain Los Angeles territories.
It makes no sense. Now you just out here getting extorted. You in LA getting extorted. Let's call it what it is. Like a lot of these guys are just out in LA getting extorted. That's it. You're really paying for protection when you could just pay for protection the legal way.
This was framed in official documents not as a rumor, but as an active extortion mechanism. It doesn't happen to everybody, and it doesn't happen everywhere, but it happens enough that the concept shapes behavior, branding, and security logistics. Imagine you are a Canadian artist. You are immensely talented, you are wildly ambitious, but you are coming from a country where the music industry can still feel like a polite committee meeting over coffee. You are used to a market where the worst thing that happens is you don't get a grant. Now, drop that exact same person into a foreign system that financially rewards extreme dominance and physically punishes naivete. This is where Aubrey Graham, Drake, becomes the absolute template for survival. Before the myth of the sixth god, there was the route map. Drake's early entry into the United States infrastructure is unusually well documented. The pathway runs directly through Jazz Prince in the orbit of Rap-A-Lot Records in Houston.
We drive down West Time, I'm like, let me play some Drake, even though he told me don't play this shit no more. So I was like, you know what, let me play some Drake for him. I played it and it was I looked over to him and he was bobbing his head. So I was like, okay, something's going right. I played another song, I think it was Brand New, with Drake was singing on it. And he was like, who is this? I was like, oh, it's that dude Drake that you told me you didn't like. He was like, oh, okay. So I went on and played another song. He was like, this dude is pretty nice. I was like, I told you. He was like, where is he at? I'm like, he's in Toronto. He's in Canada. He was like, can he fly down right now?
This wasn't just A&R scouting. It was an introduction to Lil Wayne and the deep-rooted power structures of the Southern hip-hop machine. That story matters because it proves that crossing the border isn't just travel, it is recruitment. When you are a polite, easygoing actor who grew up in the affluent neighborhood of Forest Hill, and you are suddenly recruited into a machine run by the most formidable figures in American music, you have two options. You stay exactly who you were and you get eaten alive by the extortion networks, or you build a suit of armor. Drake built the armor. When critics accuse him of adopting different personas, of acting like a mob boss, of hardening his exterior and creating his own intense gang affiliations, they miss the psychological point. Overcompensation is not being fake. Overcompensation is a survival response. He became the monster he needed to be so that the American machine wouldn't extort him.
It's everything I always wanted. It's what I work tirelessly for. And relentlessly, just constantly trying to. The realization that it's possible was extremely important. I don't credit myself for anything other than that. If this person can do this, I can do this.
He adapted to the geopolitics of the tightrope because he knew he couldn't afford to fall off. But the tightrope does not forgive mistakes. If Drake is the template for adaptation, Tory Lanez is the terrifying warning label. Tory Lanez, born in Brampton, Ontario, had the exact same obsessive underdog Canadian drive, but his story is what happens when playing the American game stops being a metaphor. He immersed himself completely in the toxic, high-stakes reality of United States industry politics. He acted as though the geopolitical rules of the American machine were a playground. The consequences were not a PR crisis. The consequences were real bullets. A California appeals court upheld his conviction for the shooting of Megan Thee Stallion, and he is currently serving a 10-year sentence in a state penitentiary. That is not industry gossip. That is the American system closing on a Canadian artist like a steel door. If hip-hop is about gang politics and territorial pressure, the pop world is about something entirely different. Pop is about soul consumption. It is not about whether you can look tough. It is about whether your humanity can be consumed by hundreds of millions of strangers 24 hours a day, and you still recognize the person looking back at you in the mirror. Justin Bieber is the cleanest case study of this consumption because his pipeline was so incredibly rapid. Discovered at 13 years old on YouTube, plucked out of Stratford, Ontario, flown to Atlanta, introduced to Usher, and handed a recording contract in 2008. That is not a gradual adjustment to fame. That is psychological violence by acceleration. He was taken from the Canadian safety net and strapped directly to the engine of the American pop machine before his brain had even finished developing. And you can watch the cost of that extraction on the public record. The machine demands flesh, and Bieber paid the toll. He canceled the remainder of his Justice tour dates, citing severe health issues after Ramsay Hunt syndrome caused partial facial paralysis. He publicly disclosed battles with Lyme disease and chronic mono. He has spoken openly about his severe drug use, describing in his own documentary series how he attempted to use heavy substances just to escape the crushing, suffocating pressure of his own life.
I took some time off to just figure myself out.
What's been the biggest change in your life since then?
I was pretty lost, dude, and I woke up one morning and I felt like God was telling me something, and not super religious or anything. I just felt like a voice, and I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna change my life around.
This is the red line interpretation. A kid from Ontario learned a brutal lesson too early. The work never turns off, because if you slow down to heal, the machine will simply replace you.
I'm a dad, I'm a husband. You're not getting it, it's not clocking to you. It's not clocking to you that I'm standing on business, is it? Gee, money.
Money, get out of here, bro. Money. You don't care about people. Only money.
And then there is The Weeknd, the artist who has practically made a career out of printing his own psychological warning labels. The Weeknd gives us the rare gift of total self-awareness. He abruptly ended a massive stadium show in Los Angeles in 2022 after completely losing his voice. Later reporting emphasized his own framing of the event. It was the result of intense stress, severe anxiety, and self-imposed pressure. But the most damning evidence isn't in the press releases, it is in the music. On the track Snow Child, he leaves a confession hidden in plain sight. He sings, "Cali was the mission, but now a N-word leaving." That single line is an autopsy of the Canadian dream. California was the mission. Leaving the cold, dark winters of Toronto for the palm trees and the industry thrones was the only goal that mattered.
I spoke about Los Angeles in my music, and I had never been. For example, in the morning, Cali is the mission, you know? And to me, that's like a fantasy world, you know? California is like, you made it if you go to California.
Was it what you had imagined it to be when you were writing about it?
No.
It feels like you started to uncover a seedier kind of dark side of wealth as well. Like that seemed to sort of inspire you too.
Yeah, because I mean, the trilogy was more like wealth was the motive.
Yeah.
And then, you know, after Kissland, it was like, we finally have the wealth and, you know, we're enjoying it. And then, I mean, of course, everybody wants to be rich, but it comes with its negative as well.
And then, California actually happened. He achieved the dream, only to realize that Los Angeles is a plastic purgatory. When he writes songs about LA culture consuming him, about the emptiness of the hills, he is not inventing a cinematic narrative. He is following the breadcrumbs of his own decay. He won the escape, only to realize that the escape was its own prison. So here's the final verdict, and I want to be forensically precise about this. This is not a narrative about Canadian superiority. This is not a claim that Canadians inherently work harder than Americans. It is a study in outsider psychology. The Canadian artists who conquer America do so because they absolutely have to. They know that 92% of their royalties lie across that border. They know the US market represents $17 billion in revenue. They know that if they want to be a global superstar, there is no comfortable fallback option in Toronto. They cannot just stay local and be legends. They are operating without a net. And when you operate without a net for long enough, the chemistry of your brain fundamentally changes. The all-in or nothing mindset stops being a motivational quote you put on a vision board. It becomes a trauma response. Drake shows us one form of adaptation, building a network, establishing leverage, and wearing geopolitical armor. Tory Lanez shows us what happens when that exact same ecosystem turns lethal and irreversible. Justin Bieber shows us what the pop centrifuge does to a kid who never had the chance to grow up gradually. And The Weeknd shows us the existential aftermath of getting exactly what you asked for. This is the border tax. It is not paid in dollars. It is not paid in visas or immigration paperwork. The tax is entirely psychological, because once the American machine breaks you down and remakes you into something hardened enough to survive it, you never get to go home the same person again. This is Redline Theory. Thanks for watching.